Aloha, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jennifer Dwight, and I'm a volunteer for AARP Hawaii. Tonight's Fast, Healthy, and Ono cooking demonstrations will focus on three popular pupus. On behalf of our sponsors, Uwala Leaf Cafe at Windward Community College, Kaunoa Senior Services on Maui, and AARP Hawaii, I'd like to thank you for tuning in this evening. If you're unfamiliar with AARP Hawaii, we are a membership organization for people 50 and older, but what we do for everyone. We hope that with this cooking series, you will learn some techniques that you can use to build or maintain a healthy lifestyle. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping now. This is a picture of what you should be seeing at the bottom of your Zoom screen on a PC and possibly the top of the screen on an iPad. Everyone is currently on mute. If you want to submit a question for the chef, please click on the button that says Q&A and type in your question. Bev Parker will be monitoring the questions and making sure they get to the chef. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you may type your questions in the comments. We won't be using the raise hand command because questions will be submitted in the Q&A. The chat command also isn't necessarily going to be needed unless you want to communicate a technical issue to the staff. Tonight, we are giving away 3 prizes of custom spices from the Uwala Leaf Cafe via random number drawing. If you are chosen, you will receive notification from Bev Parker via private chat. You'll need to confirm your name and email so that we can contact you about where to send your prize. And now I am pleased to introduce Chef Daniel Swift. Chef, over to you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, my camera timed out, so it's moving back around. Let me hopefully get you guys dialed in. Can you see me and hear me, I hope?
We can see and hear you.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, welcome to Fast, Healthy, and Ono Cooking. I'm Daniel Swift. Appreciate that introduction. And this is the Uwala Leaf Cafe kitchen. So we have a different setup tonight. I moved into the kitchen because I'm cooking a couple things. We're kind of going out on a limb in the sense that we're trying to do 3 pupus in one 30-minute class. So it's going to be kind of fast and furious, but they're all really, really simple. There's a lot of variations that you can do on each of them. And it was just nice to get back kind of in the kitchen a little bit. So that being said, the 3 that we'll be going over tonight are stuffed jalapeno poppers, they're called oftentimes. We're baking these. We're not breading and deep frying them. More often than not, they're probably breaded and deep fried. They can also be grilled. We're filling them tonight with light cream cheese and sharp cheddar mixture, but you could also fill them with tofu or roasted vegetables or any number of things, and then treat it the same way that you do this particular recipe. So I think I noted on the recipe some of the variations there. So that'll be the first one, and then we're going to do like a meatball, which is a variation of the meatball stuffing that we used for the pot stickers class. Changed up the herbs a little bit. We'll go into the details of it, and then we roll that in soaked rice and we steam it. So sometimes they're called hedgehogs or porcupine sausage balls. There's different names for it, but that's one of my favorite ones, and it's really, really versatile. And then I'm going to show you the salmon noodle nests. It's one of my favorites for a lot of reasons, which we can talk about when we make that. But those are the 3 we'll try to get through over the course of the next 30 minutes. I think we can do it, no problem. As was mentioned, please feel free to send your questions. I'll be happy to answer as many as I can. This is our second class for 2021. We're running through the end of second quarter, so into the end of June, and we're still looking for some themes. So if you have some ideas, shoot them our way. We got a couple last week from the bread class 1. So let me just highlight, as always, we try to focus on some of the components or elements and techniques, right? So recipes are super simple to get your hands on and to follow, but I'll try to back up on each of them whenever we have a class so that we can look at the elements that go into it. So for these pupus, it's almost like a canapé in a sense, or an hors d'oeuvre or an appetizer. which is basically what a poo-poo is, but there's components to it. So what I'm breaking it down to tonight is like the base, the body, the garnish, and the sauce that would go with them. So they're a little bit different in the elements that go into each of those. And we'll go through those as we make them. So you can get creative. That's one of the best things I think I'm experiencing from this class is the feedback from folks saying that, hey, you know, I like being able to substitute this for that, or maybe I want to utilize a leftover. That's the goal, is to understand sort of the techniques and then get creative and create your own stuff, jalapeno popper or whatever the pepper is or whatever the item is, so you can get creative. So this one is super simple. I've got the cheese, the sharp cheddar, and the light herb cream cheese. So you can add, if you have this recipe or you're following along or looking at it, you can add all kinds of fresh herbs of your own. Just for ease, I try to limit the amount of things that people have to purchase. So the cream cheese mixture that I've got has fresh herbs and vegetables in it. So there's so many different kinds today that you can get of cream cheese and light cream cheese with different things in them. You don't necessarily have to buy the fresh herbs, although you certainly could. And I'm just mixing these together really well. Let me see if I can switch this over to try to make a little bit of a paste out of it. And here's where I could, like I said, add different things. As a matter of fact, earlier I had some sriracha out, so I'm going to add a touch of that. We're using that in another item, but I'm like, oh, I want to make this a little bit more spicy because we're stuffing some sweet peppers, not just jalapenos. So that's basically it there. And if you find that your filling is a little on the wet side, depending on the brand of cream cheese, you can add a little breadcrumbs. We have those to top them, but you could also add them to the mixture a little bit if you wanted to. So let me really quick show you the peppers. I've got a variety of them here, and I really love these sweet baby bells. They're not really hot at all. I had to shop around for a jalapeno, and this is really honestly just kind of too big for an individual popper. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to cut that one differently so that it works for what we're doing. But these mixed baby bells, if you don't want something hot, you can go that route. It works really well. And then for this one, since it is a larger one, I'm just going to cut it in thirds. So I'm going to go on a bias here. I'm going to turn it and then go on a bias here as well. So I'm sort of creating 3 different vessels for it. And then I just need to dig out the seeds, which is no problem. I'll just use a spoon for that. I recommend in the recipe and at home that you use gloves. Don't be like me and not use gloves. I earlier prepared a bunch, and you'll see them here in a minute. And then, of course, touched my eye, and I didn't use gloves. So it was burning for a little while.
For you, Dan. I've had that too. So this is Bev. Cindy's got a question. Can you use panko? And if so, fine or coarse, or it doesn't really matter?
Doesn't matter at all. That's really more for texture, and you'll see them when they're baked, is to give us a little bit of crunch. As a matter of fact, the breadcrumbs that I have here are the ones, the bread that we made last week. So it has the rice and the multigrains in it. I had a leftover little roll in the fridge, so I just put it in a food processor, ground it up, and made fresh breadcrumbs. So do keep in mind, like I was saying, your breadcrumbs, if they're purchased like panko and stuff, will be 100% dry. So you do want to make sure that you oil them a little bit, like I'll show you here in a minute. But the fresher ones have more moisture in them, so it works a little bit better for the longer run. And then I'm just using a pastry bag because it's easier. You could use a Ziploc, cut it out. You can use a spoon and just spoon it in, doesn't matter. But if you're using a pastry bag, it's just really easy to sort of inject it inside like that, fills it up. And then I'm just going to dip it on the breadcrumbs, and they'll stick really, really, really nice. So on this one, same thing. So it's still pretty big, but this is closer to a bite size than it was if you were doing just a half a jalapeno. And then I dip both sides of that. And then the last little piece. And these were really hot. You know, sometimes you'll get jalapenos and they're not that hot. Other times they're really hot. These are almost a little too hot for me. And I don't mind heat and spice. So just be aware. You always want to test them first, especially before you give them to guests. You want to know how hot the pepper actually is. And then what I always want to do too is use some spray. I recommend, I don't have it right now, but like olive oil spray. It's much easier. This is just a canola spray. And we use a pump for it. And you want to make sure that you spray the pepper and also the breadcrumbs. That way it helps the skin blister and roast a little bit easier, gets dark a little bit quicker. And then that's really all there is to that. That'll just basically go in the oven. And I have it at this one, a little toaster oven, so I have it at 400. And the little batch I cooked earlier, I went about 20, 25 minutes. So it'll be about right for what we're doing for the class time to pull those out and have them browned up so you'll be able to see those. Plus some of the other ones that I did with the stuffed baby bells.
So Dan, just a couple of questions.
Yeah.
First of all, Christine says, thanks very much for doing this class. And she is avoiding dairy, cream cheese, and cheese. What's a good alternative for a similar texture?
You can use tofu, soft tofu in a food processor, or firm tofu ground up and mixed together. Depends on the texture you're looking for. If you want something smooth, you can go a little bit longer with the soft tofu. You probably would need to add breadcrumbs to tighten it up, because remember, it's going to heat up, and the cheese or the tofu would even tend to like loosen up and spill out a little bit. So you don't want to bind it a little bit. So those breadcrumbs in the filling would work great. Fresh herbs, you'd be fine that way, or just diced, sauteed small vegetables that you could then run in the food processor, chop really fine. That would work great. So anything like that would be really, really good.
And just one more quick one from Rita, who she's asking, what is the tip of that plastic package you used?
What is the, I'm sorry, what was that?
What is the tip of the plastic package you used?
Oh, this one here?
Yeah.
There's no tip. It is just a pastry bag. It has a mark on there. It shows you where to cut it. That's just colored. But you can purchase pastry bags now in the supermarket. They're a lot easier than Ziplocs, but there's nothing on there. You just cut it, and you don't need a tip for this particular one.
And just regarding the tofu, firm tofu?
Depends. If you want it thinner and smoother, then you would go with soft tofu, drained, and in a food processor. You can almost make a mayonnaise type. Well, I call it tofu-naise, with soft tofu and olive oil, a little bit of lemon juice, and it'll smooth up and come up like a mayonnaise, but it's vegan. So if you want that smooth texture, you want to go with the soft. And if you want a more of a coarse texture like cottage cheese, go with the firm. It would work sort of the same way, but don't run it so long in a food processor.
Great, thank you.
And then I'm just adding all these other ingredients in here. So I've got some diced mushrooms, some chili paste, some chopped cabbage, fresh garlic, some cilantro and some green onions, some sesame oil, and some soy sauce. And like I mentioned, this is just a variation on the recipe that we did in a previous class for the pot stickers. I just changed the flavor profile a little bit. And this can be anything. I encourage you guys to, you can make this Southwest flavored. Take a packet of taco seasoning mix or something like that and mix that up in there. I'm using chicken today. You can use tofu for this as well, but you would need to bind it with some egg. You can use turkey. You can use pork. I put beef on the recipe, but normally you wouldn't probably use beef for that, but it certainly could. It depends on what you're looking for. And then here, I'm just looking to mix a nice smooth paste. And basically it's a meatloaf, it's a sausage, it's a stuffing, whatever you want to call it. It's basically ground protein with herbs and vegetables and seasoning inside. So anything you want to put in here would be perfectly good. And then I also put on the recipe that there's an option for sauteing those vegetables in advance of adding them to them. For the pot stickers, I tend to do that. Tonight, just in the interest of time, I'm not, because I'd have to let it cool before I threw it in. But you could saute that cabbage. You could saute the garlic and all the vegetables just lightly, and then let it cool and add it to the raw protein and take it from there. That would work just fine. And then this is a good stopping point where you would want to usually cook a small piece so that you can taste the finished product and make sure if there needs to be adjustments to the taste of the product, you can do it at that particular time. Once you make the meatballs and roll them and steam them and cook them, there's nothing you can do. They're already seasoned the way they're going to be. So this is your option to test a little bit, taste it, and make sure that it's where you want it. And then I just have my soaked rice here. This is the nice multi-grain. I tend to use these a lot. I think I went with the Japanese one. It has brown rice, sprouted brown rice, and a bunch of different grains in it. I soaked this in hot water for about 4 hours. Ideally, this would probably go overnight. And then I also can use white rice. Almost any kind of rice works fine. So here I just have some soaked white rice. Works great. So I'll do both and we can take a look at them. This would then just be scooped into small balls. You can use an ice cream scoop if you have one, or a couple spoons, almost like quenelles. And then I recommend that you put them on a tray and put them in the refrigerator if you can and you have time for about an hour to chill, and they'll set up a little bit. Makes it easier to roll. Not absolutely necessary, but just a little tip to make it easier for you when you're in the rolling stage. So I'll change cameras really quick and show you sort of the close-up of that. So you can see the one that I just did is a little on the softer side, whereas these are a little firmer and they'll hold up a little bit better. So I'm going to just basically drop it in the rice and then I'm just rolling it by hand until it's nice and coated. I'm going to use a bamboo basket with a couple tea leaves that I cut to put it in. So I'll put one of those. I'll do the fresh one as well with the multi-grain, pressing those grains into it. And then the other ones I'm going to do with the white rice. And I soaked the white rice for about 2 hours, which should be fine. Put that in there. And basmati works, jasmine rice works, all the rices work really well for this. It's so simple. And then you can even store these in the fridge once they're rolled and then steam them when you need them. One great thing about being in the kitchen is I have a sink where I can wash my hands really quick. So that's all there is to that. Super simple. And you can see that, just a little bit of a difference in the color, obviously from the multi-grain one, and that's got barley and different things in it. And then I'm just going to steam it.
So Chef, a couple of things about the rice. Actually, I have 3 questions about it. First, Jolene, how long did you say to put the meatballs in the refrigerator? That's not rice.
I left those in for about an hour, hour and a half. They firmed up once they chilled. They'll set up a little bit. So there's no product in there necessarily that will set when it's chilled. It's just that I had made my own sausage from chicken thigh. I ground it up in the food processor, and when you do that, it tends to be a little bit loose. Whereas if you were buying ground, they were out of ground chicken. They were out of ground pork. They had ground turkey, but it was like $8 a pound, which was a little expensive, I thought.
Yeah.
So I got a better deal on chicken. So, but if you do put it in there at only an hour and a half, 2 hours, plenty.
And can you freeze the meatballs before you cook them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would work fine. No problem at all.
Okay,
Yeah,
and in
that's good.
regards to the rice, is that raw rice and can you use mochi rice?
It is raw rice, and yes, you can. You can use any kind of rice you want. So the brown rice mixture that I'm using today takes longer than any of the other ones that I've used in the past. But it is, we're focusing on, being fast and healthy as well as Ono. So I always want to try to incorporate whole grains if we can, sprouted grains if we can. Even I was thinking at the supermarket, it's just pretty amazing the number of different choices you have today in the rice section. So there were some blends that had quinoa in it and other different grains that would have been really, really good to try. But I always go a little crazy when I shop for this class, and I don't want to get too many things. But
We appreciate it.
Yeah, any grain that you want, and even just the straight up white rice works awesome. The sticky Thai style glutinous rice is probably one of my favorites. It might not be as healthy for you, but it sure is delicious. That's for sure.
And can you, sorry, Dan.
No, I just put it on the stove in the basket to let it steam. So.
Right on. And then can you steam the, I'm assuming they're talking about the meatballs. Can you steam the meatballs in the Instapot?
Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't. Depends, some Instapots have the little strainer. I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, you could steam these in a saute pan if you wanted to. You could put them in the bottom of the pan, a little bit of water and a lid on it and let that steam that way. You'd end up with a little sauce maybe at the bottom as well. So you could do this any number of ways, but you do want that moisture to cook the rice because it's only been hydrated and soaked. It hasn't been brought to a temperature over 200 degrees. So that's what we're looking for here. We got the steam going at 212. If you're in a skillet with a lid and it's boiling, then you're at 212 as well. So you know that rice will cook. So carbohydrates, remember, as we've talked about a couple of times, even these noodles, they need to go to temperatures over, 195, 190, 195, but 212 where steam and boiling water are guaranteed to cook it. No problem.
So Dan, I have 3 more questions. Do you want me to wait or do you want me to?
No, go ahead, and I'm going to drop in the salmon noodles just because they take about 3 minutes. You can get these in every supermarket. It's a wheat-based noodle. You can do this with soba as well, a buckwheat noodle. I find this to be the best one. A packet of these noodles costs about a little less than $2, depending on where you're going. And each one of these bundles, this pack has 3 in it. Each one of these bundles will make 8 little nests. So you're in it for pennies per. This was always one of my favorite appetizers to do for like Taste of Honolulu or any sort of large events like that, because they're very inexpensive and then you can come back and put whatever you want on top of it. So these are designed, I'll show you if I can do it right here, hopefully. My glasses aren't working or my fingers aren't. And this packaging is different, but they have a little tab on there so that theoretically, of course it doesn't work while I'm doing the show. It worked for the other 2, but there's a tab. You pull on that and you would just go over the pot and the paper threads through it so that when you hold it and you let go, it spins and it drops them all down so that they aren't stuck together. So that particular one didn't work that well, but notice that when you go to make those at home.
Very good. So how long do you steam the noodles for?
The noodles I'm boiling, and these are going to take about 3. It depends on the brand. So I cook them in as little as 3 minutes and then upwards of maybe 6 minutes. They do not take long at all. But keep in mind, it's also like a pasta. So it depends on how you like them. I like it cooked a little al dente. So there's a little bit of a bite, al dente means to the tooth. So we look for a little bit of crunch in the noodle, but if you want it soft all the way through, that's no problem. Just cook it a little bit longer, but probably not more than 6 minutes for sure.
Okay, and when you freeze the meatballs, should you do that without rolling them in the rice?
I think you could do it with rolling it in the rice. You just might lose some of the rice in the freezer, especially if they're in a Ziploc bag or something. If they were carefully stacked in a Tupperware with a lid, you'd probably be okay. But if you were putting them in a bag and they're bouncing around and you're moving them around in the freezer, that rice would probably fall off. So your best bet would be probably to freeze them and then take them out and thaw them in the fridge and then roll them and steam them.
And do that. So about the steamer. So I guess not everybody has a steamer. So Helen's asking, what else could you use? And a few people are piping up saying, well, you could use a metal steamer that folds up or put some chopsticks on the bottom. What's your thought on that if one does not have a steamer?
Basically anything that would allow the steam to come up and surround it. And these little baskets, I think you can even, buy them at Long's. A lot of times they're on the top shelf in the housewares. Maybe they're $12 and you get 2 baskets and a lid. So they're not expensive. There's also metal ones. But like I said, any pot that would create, a steamer where you, like you said, put in a couple chopsticks or a small saucer with some water, and then you could just set a plate inside, as long as it's not sitting in the water, and put a lid on it.
Great
or
idea.
aluminum foil would work fine. So just get creative. You don't have to go out and spend a bunch of money purchasing items like that, although these are super cheap and really useful for a lot of things. The good thing about a basket like this is you could have 2 different items going, right? So on the bottom, you could have your meatballs. On the top, you could put in some fresh vegetables. So when it's done, you got a complete meal, which is kind of useful. And then I always just grab a noodle and check it. That's the only way to really know if you've finished cooking your noodles or your pasta. Give it a taste. And then I'm just going to strain it.
So are you boiling your salmon in salt water?
Normally, yes. Yeah. Anytime you're cooking pasta, you should always have a pinch of salt in the water. Well, actually, maybe a little bit more than a pinch. I always say that it should taste like the sea or like the ocean, right? So you should be able to impart a little bit of flavor into the noodle when you're cooking it in the water. Otherwise, it absorbs the sauce, especially with egg pasta, the sauce you're serving it with. It absorbs it a little too much and takes away from the flavor of the dish.
Okay.
So I've got these cooked now, and I'm going to change views just because I want to show this little trick. And they're still warm, but I ran some. Oh, sorry. I ran some water over it, just a little bit, not a lot, to cool it slightly, just so that I can handle it. And then I'll always tend to use a fork. Grab a small amount, and like I said, that roll will make about 8. And then you get a little bit in your fork, and then I just cup it in my hand and I twirl it around just like you're eating pasta at home. And as it wraps around, I tend to blow on it a little bit to cool it, just because this one's a little on the warm side. Just like you're eating pasta at home. And as it wraps around, oh, I hear feedback. Okay. I'll show you one more. And if the noodles get sticky, you can just come back to the sink. These are fine, but depending on how many you're making, you can always run just a little bit more water. And then you're right back to where you were, and you have the ability to have more flexibility in twirling it. So a little bit in there on the fork, spin it. As that cools, often done with egg pasta as well in Italian restaurants. And then you create the nice small little nest. Now you want those to cool. I would normally put that on a tray and then go into the refrigerator and let them set up. And that's what I'm going to show you here. Is those,
Chef,
and since yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any concerns? Buncho is asking about bamboo steamers and if they're sanitary after food is touched it. What's your thoughts on bamboo steamers?
Yeah, that's a great question. We just run it through the dish machine, just like everything else. Bamboo's super resilient to moisture. So it's cooking now, obviously, in the steam.
Some seniors can't keep a pet.
Yeah, it's cooking the pork, but we just run it through our dish machine in the back.
Okay. And can you twirl that pasta with a spoon?
You could, absolutely. Yeah, you can take a large spoon and twirl it for sure. That would work.
Great.
And another thing you can do is what I've done here. These are some of the finished ones. Let me change that here so you can take a look. It can also be done in a container. So here are some of the finished ones. And for the one up front, the little round ones, which are just like the ones that we did here, like the round ones I have on the plate. This one has a little wasabi, aioli, some toppico, a piece of basil, a red pepper, and a little bit of black sesame seed and regular toasted sesame seed. So it's super simple there. The one here in this particular vessel, I'm going to leave it in and serve it in the container. And it has a shrimp, a sriracha aioli on top, and a green onion. So that's a really, really simple way to do that. So the smaller ones here were put into a little plastic cup. I let them cool, and then I just turn them out. So there's lots of different ways to do it and get creative and have fun with it. So it's super simple and really inexpensive. And it's just a great canvas, like I said, for the different sauces and things that you might add. So over here, I've got, like I said, I've got a nice sriracha mayo. I might put a little bit of that on top of these. The only thing you want to be careful with is, and then I just put it in my hammer here, is not to use a really wet, like shoyu-based vinaigrette. If you put something that's really thin on there, it's going to run through it and it'll break the nest apart. You want a nice thick type dressing. So if you're doing something like sriracha mayo, roasted vegetables, your cucumber slice, anything on there would be great. You can then come back and garnish it. This, I'm just putting some sesame seeds like the other one. And I've got some chopped chives. So this can be vegetarian. It doesn't have to have shrimp or chicken or any protein on it. It can be straight up vegetarian, and it turns out great. So lots of different ways to approach that one. And like I said, this is only, about 8 cents a piece to create this particular hors d'oeuvre. A little bit more, obviously, if you're putting a shrimp on top.
So chef, should you always run warm or cold water over the cooked noodles and pasta?
Yeah, you just have to because it's hot. You don't want to burn your hand, right?
Okay, very good. And can you show the rolled nest close up, please?
Yeah, absolutely. The ones here?
Yes, please. Yeah, Christine's
Are
very
you getting
impressive.
feedback when I switch cameras?
Just momentarily, but it's fine.
Okay. I don't want to mess it up. So here's the simple one that I did. Let me switch it for you. So you could put like a quarter of a boiled egg on top. And the beautiful thing about these is, see, you can pick them up. Right? You'll be able to hold them in your hand. That's the idea here. You can even twirl them as we did and put them on a serving spoon. One of the Chinese style spoon works really, really nice. And then lay those out on a platter. So each bite is one appetizer. But like I said, I mean, it's like a little shooter. It works great with, an oyster on top would be nice too.
Love it. Love it. So Lynn and Ruben are asking, they're really trying to cut salt out of their diet. and out of their cooking? Is it a chemical reaction, or is it just a taste issue that we put salt in?
For cooking the pasta, that's a
Yeah.
taste issue only. Yeah, you do not need to use salt at all. No problem. You can go without salt for sure. You can go a low sodium dressing. Just get creative. The flavor of the dressing that you put on it is going to dominate whatever it is that you're, or whatever the flavor profile is going to be. So the noodle's really more, like I said, just sort of the base, the vessel to carry the things that you're flavoring. Now, a soba would be more flavorful, so you'd have more options there. And let me show you kind of a close-up here of these. Just came out. So you get a lot more spike out of the white rice. And I mean, I've always loved these. I have never actually made it with this grain mix. I'm going to be interested to see how it goes. But that's basically what they should look like. And they are a little bit fragile and the rice will fall off. So you do want to be careful. For this, I would just serve it in the basket, but I can also transfer them to a platter.
Are you serving those warm or chilled?
I serve them warm normally, but room temperature is also great, and chilled is good too. So honestly, it would work any way you want.
And how do you recommend one eats those? Do the noodles get a bit stiff?
How do I what? I'm sorry.
How do you eat them in a
Meatballs?
polite way? Yeah.
Yeah.
The nests, I think.
Like if I were serving this in a restaurant, it would go out just like that, and you would just use your chopsticks.
Okay. What about the nests, the salmon nests?
Yeah, same thing. You can pick up those nests with chopsticks, no problem.
Okay.
If they're made correctly, like the ones that we just did, these haven't been chilled, so they're a little bit loose. I don't know if you guys can see. They need to chill, but that's only been about 5 minutes at room temperature. If they're in the fridge, they're going to set up no problem, like this. All right, so with chopsticks, easy to pick that up. But you don't want to make them too big. It's sort of designed to be a one bite deal. One bite and done. And then these work great with just a little garnish. I'm going to put a little bit of cilantro on top. And a nice dipping sauce of choice with that would be great. That's where I oftentimes use a shoyu-based one, which is really good. And then the last thing we have is our stuffed peppers, which are coming out now. And I had some earlier. These are the ones that were done. I can smell the jalapenos, beautiful. So that's about 20 minutes in the oven, and they've browned up, they've crisped up. I have some serrano peppers here, so jalapeno and serranos and the bells. And then I was just going to use a little bit of parsley. To garnish that.
What about a sauce, chef? Do you use any kind of sauces with these? Bobby's wondering.
For the poppers, you can use any kind of sauce you want. It would depend on the filling. So for these particular ones, it has the herbs, and I put in some sriracha. So it's got the cream cheese. You don't need a sauce, but you could certainly use a sauce. Like a nice spicy mustard would be good. Even a barbecue sauce would be good. Lots of different options there. Do note here that, like, on the ones that were cut at an angle, it can tend to spill out a little bit. You might see that, so do be careful with that. If I were making all of them, it will still be, once it cools, it's still super hot, but you can still pick it up. Oh,
can you give us an overhead view of that,
absolutely.
chef?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
So these are still hot. They're a little hot to the touch, but you can see how it sort of spilled out a tiny bit, but I just pushed that back in and then you'd still be able to pick it up. Nice and brown on the bottom, blistered the skin, really nice, crisped up the breadcrumbs, and that would give you really good texture. The smooth cheese that's in the center, and then the crispy, crunchy aspect of the breadcrumbs. Good contrast in textures there. So those are that's all three of them.
I think you're going to have to cook up a few more because I think we're all going to be right over.
Come on over. Yeah, I can't eat them all by myself.
Oh, they look fabulous.
Feel free, feel free. So, but what I would, just try to remind everybody is to, always when you're jumping into new recipes or dealing with new techniques, kind of break it down. Think about what is going into it. If we looked at what we were talking about earlier with the base, body, garnish, and sauce. So for this one, the base is really the rice because it's on the bottom, even though we've surrounded the meatball with the rice. That's the base, the body's the sausage. The garnish in this case is cilantro and peppers, and then the sauce would be probably for me, Thai chili or a shoyu-based sauce. Here we've got the pepper. One trick I learned earlier today when I was cutting peppers in half, I'll share this with you guys. A lot of times they tend to roll around because they're round. So as I was putting them on the tray, they were like falling over on their sides. So I went to get my knife and a smaller knife, and I saw my microplane zester. And then I just took my microplane and ran a few strokes over the bottom of the peppers. And it shaved a nice flat spot on the bottom of it. And I did it over the bowl. So it went into the filling and I cross-utilized it. So that's a new trick I learned today. I thought I'd pass that on for you, but it gives you a nice flat bottom on the bottom of your peppers. So when you're dealing with round things, bust out your microplane. If you don't have one, they're not very expensive. Give it a quick shave on the bottom and you'll have that flat spot. So it'll set.
Samuelin is just saying, this is perfect, chef, just in time for Super Bowl.
That's right. Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's great. Now, one question from Dawn. Do you recommend, and actually before I do that, if you have any questions, people, please put them in the Q&A if you don't mind. And Dawn was wondering, do you recommend using tea leaves in the basket or can you use parchment paper?
You can use parchment paper. I had just happened to cut a tea leaf down. Well, I actually pulled it up from the roots where we're transplanting it. So I took a leaf off of there. It can be parchment paper. You could probably even use aluminum foil, but I would probably spray it lightly with some nonstick spray or use the nonstick aluminum foil. But be careful and make sure that the steam will come up through the basket. You don't want to cover the whole thing so that no steam can come through. It'll create a barrier there and the steam might just come out the sides. But you can see I left a space there for steam to come up through and to cook it. And even serving that on a nice fresh tea leaf would look really, really nice. So great. That's just a really versatile, they're all really versatile appetizers or pupus that gives you a chance to get creative and try to get healthy and, make sure that you're trying to utilize the things that you have at home and not have to buy a bunch of different stuff every week.
Well, they just look terrific. And so we're just about out of time, everybody. So I would like to, first of all, congratulate the winners of the custom spicers from Mualu Leaf Cafe. And that would be Karen Takara, Christina Inoka, and Lori Ito. Congratulations to all of you for winning the door prizes today. And I do want to thank very much our wonderful Chef Dan. I don't know, every week it gets better. It's just great. Thank you. It's just wonderful.
And also, we did it.
Yeah.
We did it almost, right? 35 minutes. Maybe.
Yeah, did great. Thank you
Awesome.
very much. We so appreciate you doing this for all of us. Thank you to Jen for doing the introduction today. And next week, we're going to focus on learning the difference between emulsified and non-emulsified dressings. So we'll be making a delicious, in fact, I think I have to just show you this because I have a picture of it. I'm just going to stop you for a second there,
Yeah,
Chef,
go ahead.
and just put this one. Oh, I'm so sorry. There it is. Oh my goodness. So we're going to be doing this Thai beef salad. So I can hardly wait for that one too. So I just wanted to show you that. And of course, that'll be next week. at 5 o'clock once again next Thursday. And you can register for this event at aarp.org/Hawaii. Go to the upcoming events tab and you can register right there. We send you the recipe once your registration is completed. So thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Chef. This was wonderful. And we hope to see all of you again next week. Bye now.
Aloha.
Thank you, everybody, for your nice comments. I'm sure the chef appreciates them as well once we finally get them to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just
We
great.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And come on over. Oh, how close are you? You gonna come and get some peppers?
Eva Beach.
Oh,
Not close enough. Because believe me, I would. But
we gotta film at some remote locations. We'll be at we gotta schedule one out at your place.
there we go. I love that idea. Plenty of room to do it.
All right. Have a great
That's great.
night, everyone. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks.